Alrighty, so this is, again, born out of crisis, one example of a disaster resilience leader. So how did it all start? This photograph that you see here is our kickoff rally that was actually in January of 2006. The organization started 2 months before that, but this is what put us on the map in terms of the media. And this was at the Corps of Engineers headquarters, January 21st, 2006. Okay, it all began with a fight. I got into a very heated argument with a gentleman from Alexandria, Louisiana, who told me, in no uncertain terms, that I deserved what happened to me because I live in a city below sea level, and Hurricane Katrina was a huge, monstrous storm, and more storms are going to come, and I deserved what happened to me. And after that altercation with him, which I won't get into, but I realized that, you know, myths are rampant, and if this gentleman was just a couple of hours from New Orleans, imagine what people in California and Illinois and Maine might be saying about us. And I also noticed that nowhere else was anybody dealing with these myths, because I spent a full month trying to find another organization that was already fighting to dispel these myths.
You sort of assumed that they would be there.
There's got to be somebody. There's got to be somebody out there, and I decided I would devote 24 hours a day to helping whoever that person is, or whoever that group is. And I had a lot of people tell me, oh, go to the One Levee Board movement. That's what they're doing. Well, no, that's not what they were doing. They were doing something completely different. And then I was told to go to the Lakeview Neighborhood Association. They were out there battling the myths. Well, no, they weren't. That Lakeview Neighborhood Association was concerned about themselves. So, not that there's anything wrong with that. That's what neighborhood associations do. So I realized after a month that no one was doing it, and I guess if it's going to be done, I'm going to have to do it. Okay? That's the glamour of being a disaster resilience leader. If I want it done, I'm going to have to do it myself.
Could we ask questions along the way?
Sure.
When did you discover this? When did number 4 become a reality?
Because after spending, like I said, a month, 4 weeks.
Just a month?
A month, only a month. Well, and if I haven't found them in a month, you know, I mean, where are they? I mean, and I really looked. I mean, I was really on the net calling people. Somebody's got to be doing this work.
So this is early, late in 2005.
This is now we're about mid-November.
Mid-November. Okay. November 05. Okay.
All right, and if I want to do it, looks like I'm going to have to do it. Why do it? Okay, why take on such a burden? 80% of my city was underwater, and even though my house didn't flood, I mean 8 out of 10 of my friends, 8 out of 10 people I knew flooded and probably lost everything. My son's school didn't flood, so I was relatively comfortable. I didn't have to deal with a contractor, FEMA, an insurance company. I didn't have these daily things to go through, which from what I understand, people whose houses flooded, the worst part was later. The levee failures, taking everything they had, wasn't as bad as what they had to deal with later. And then finally, I was furious. I'm still mad. I'm livid that we're blamed for what happened to us. That's got to be the worst insult to injury of all, being blamed for what happened to you when what happened was absolutely no fault of ours. Okay? I'm moving kind of quickly because, again, this is just covering the bases.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
During this time, you said that you did lose everything, like so many other people, and so that you didn't have all of these
problems.
Yeah. Did you? In your fury at this myth that was being perpetrated at that time, blaming the victims pretty much, did you also maybe have some survivor's guilt as well, that like you felt compelled to do something because you had lost everything, or?
That's a good question, and I have received that question before. And the answer is no. A lot of people felt guilty that they didn't flood.
Yeah.
No, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel guilty. And I was just lucky. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't know that my house was on what's called the natural levee, the high ground along the Mississippi River. I was just lucky. And there are a lot of other people that were lucky too, who happened to live along the river. But it's a good question, but no, whatever fueled me was more just the injustice. And that the injustice and the wrongness, and if someone's got to do something, I guess I'm going to have to do it. That answer your question? Okay. All right. So in the process of working on this PowerPoint, I came up with the idea of instead of just talking about me, okay, which I hate to do, what I would much rather do is talk about, you know, the qualities that you all are looking for. And so I imagine, suppose I had to find a replacement. What sort of innate qualities would I look for that they already have to have, not to be learned, okay, that everybody must have to be able to do the work that I've been doing for the past 5 years? What quality, skills, and what sort of individual would that be? Oh, this photograph, in case you're interested, this is this is very recent. This was our unveiling of a historic plaque at the 17th Street Canal at Ground Zero, and this is something we're very proud of at the 5th anniversary. Qualities needed. Okay, no fear of public speaking. And one thing I found that if I had no public speaking experience like this before the levees failed. And if you had asked me how were you able to do it with no background and experience, I simply looked at that little lens and thought about all the people I know that lost everything. That's it. Worked every time. Worked every time. I said, why should I be worried about this little lens looking at me when I have friends that lost everything? I even, someone I know died in the flooding, so, but that's all it took, and then I'm right back where I need to do.
So it's really the social justice, it's the fairness, it's the, that makes you, and then the stupidity of the myths.
Right, it gave me strength, it gave me strength. Whenever I'm, this isn't in my PowerPoint, whenever I'm frustrated at the slow pace of progress, or whenever I'm tired, I just, I watch a video of someone I know that lost everything, and it's a little 5-minute video called Home by Matt Faust. So anyway, so no fear of public speaking, and also to have good communication skills. It is so critical. I will say this one thing real quick as an aside. There are lots and lots of wonderful grassroots organizations in this town that have been trying to get off the ground, but because they don't have a spokesperson, they can't go anywhere. You've got to have somebody that can talk. Okay, whether it's a newspaper or the camera, it really is critical. Unfortunately, it's too critical, but that is a critical thing. Okay, sensitivity to other points of view. I've seen a lot of organizations go up in flames because of insensitivity, and it's harder to define than you might think. You know, it's impossible to be all things to all people, but it is possible to be one thing to everybody. Okay, and that's part of the reason I chose. Doing the work that I did is because a safe city to live in, safety from flooding is everyone's concern. Okay. Oh, that picture, and I knew you want to know the picture. This is our press conference, also last August, announcing that we're going to be nominating Levee Breach Site to the National Register of Historic Places. Okay, another big exciting moment. Can differentiate important from urgent. Basically, you need to be a really, really good time manager, because disaster resilience leaders work like a son of a gun. And if you're not a good time manager, if you're unable to differentiate something that's urgent and needs to be done now from something that's important and can be done tomorrow or the next day, it's going to be very, very difficult. You know, an exquisite time management, I would say, is critical to being a disaster resilience leader. A willingness to trust one's own eyes and follow one's own instincts. And that's something that comes partly from years, gray hair, okay, and partly a thorough knowledge of the, and/or, what I meant to say, and/or an exquisitely thorough knowledge of the information, of all the details, and of all the issues, okay? And when I decided to launch Levee.org, I had the gray hair, and basically I was 48 years old, and you know, had been around the block a few times, you know, and knew that if I was confused by something, everyone probably was. Not necessarily, but most people were confused. Confidence in myself, but then also a thorough knowledge of the information. I have been voraciously reading the net, the web, every single day. And remember, I didn't flood, which meant I wasn't dealing with a contractor, FEMA, and insurance company. So I had that ability that I could be reading. I got a quick aside, a member of the Corps of Engineers asked me one day, you really know a lot about the flood protection. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, how did you do that? I said, I can read. It is something they don't expect you to do.
Yeah, because they write those reports so that you can't read them.
Yeah.
They put you straight to sleep.
They don't expect anyone to read.
No, they write them in a foreign language on purpose.
That's right, that's right. A willingness to trust my own instincts. And finally, this last one's very important, good stress management. And this is the last part of my little PowerPoint. This is one of my stress managers. I play with my dogs. I work out of my home, and I take many breaks throughout the day to play with my dog. To teach them a new trick, take them for a walk, just play with them. Really, really critical. Yoga. I'm a yoga guru. Actually, I've only been doing yoga the past 2 years. But the point is just something that to de-stress, to decompress.
So you chose yoga at that point, 2 years into it.
2 years into
because
it,
you
yeah.
really needed a stress reduction.
Right. But I was doing other things, like I played tennis. And I played tennis yesterday. I won a tough match. And the exercise is good for 1,000 reasons. But what before the levees broke and I taught fitness in the public schools, I would tell these young girls why they should exercise. I told them that exercise takes big problems and turns them into little problems. Doesn't make them go away, but turns them into little problems. And I'm living it now. Okay, and a time with family, always critical. My son, who founded Levees.org with me, it was the three of us that evacuated to Lafayette, and the family was, we had dinner together every single night. Family, very, very critical. And I think that's really it. That's my, I want a good night's sleep. Yeah, I don't know if I'm lucky or I just tell myself I am going to sleep, but when my head hits the pillow, I sleep the whole night. And I think that's really critical too. I don't get up in the middle of the night to stress. And that's all there is to it. Thank you for inviting me. And this is another exciting time. This is Senator Landrieu, of course, and another leader with another of the senior members of Levees.org, Vince Pasquantonio, who is our legislative liaison. And this is a conference, I think in 2008. Okay. So so anyway, I hope this is what I meant this to be a starting point. And cover a lot of bases, and then we can get into the detail.
Questions, class? I'm going to move over there. Any questions from the presentations?
Would you say that you had a lot of these leadership skills before Katrina, or did you just find them all afterwards?
That's a really good question. I had some leadership background. I was president of the local Mount Holyoke Club, and I had a little bit of leadership, but that's a very small little group of people. If you've heard of Mount Holyoke, it's a small college. There's maybe 20 of us in town. A little bit of leadership experience. I have trouble understanding how I was able to pull this together other than it's different leadership, it's web leadership. Web leadership is very different from being in a room full of people. And the ability to lead using the web and using emails and using action items and call to actions is very different from, say, managing a department of an insurance company. And I think that's what works for me, leadership on the web, using the web. Okay?
Can you talk about how you use the web specifically?
Sure.
To get your message out?
Sure. Okay, sure, actually I think it would be. One of the, my background was, before the internet, was direct mail writing. Okay, I can remember a little postcard you get in the mail, you still get them in the mail. That was my specialty. And my expertise is if one of the flyers that I wrote was in your hand, you would act on it. Whatever it might be, go buy an apple or make a phone call. So I use that expertise to craft mailings asking people to do something, I would tell them what to do, why it's important, and when to do it. And they worked every time. That was what I was good at. So using those, I was able to build the organization. I built it from about 2,000 to about 10,000 in a year. Now it's 25,000, 4 years later. But that's a skill that's very, very useful on the web. You know, the ability to do what's called a call to action, to get people to do something, be it a phone call, sending a letter, you know, using with a click of a mouse, sending off letters to your members of Congress. Okay?
I'm sorry, it was what to do, how to do it, and when to do it?
And the deadline.
The deadline, okay.
Yeah. What to do, why it's important, deadline.
Why it's important.
I call that the secret recipe. Okay. And these are more details about my work, but and one thing that's true, the disaster resilience leadership in my case was web-based, definitely web-based. The times I was seen out in public for a press conference, most of my days is doing just what I'm doing right this minute, sitting in front of a computer. Okay, 98% of the time, and the other 2% of the time, I'm running off to a press conference or a speaking engagement. I mean, it's work from the computer. Very glamorous, yeah.
Well, let me, and the class will jump in if they have follow-up questions or even a different question, but I'm going to start you before you establish the organization, and actually it's built on a question about, were you always a leader? So tell us about your where you grew up and what your childhood was like.
Okay, well, I grew up in a very tiny town about this big called North Attleboro, Massachusetts, and I was at an early age. I realized that I didn't like being poor, and so I worked hard in school and got good grades and got a scholarship to Mount Holyoke College. So I was a go-getter, and I pushed myself very hard. I was the first person in my family to go to college, etc.
In your family, did you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have 2 brothers and a sister.
Okay.
And my brother's a fireman, and my sister is unemployed right now, and my other brother is he works at detail security. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So, my parents are deceased now.
Okay. You went to Mount Holyoke.
I went to Mount Holyoke.
What did you major?
I majored in psychology.
Okay.
And while I was there, I was lucky enough to meet my husband, who was also going to Amherst College. And I got married very young. I've been married 31 years. So, and then we started having a family right away.
Great.
Okay, so.
Well, in terms of your growing up in high school, did you get involved in any kind of in other words, what was the experiences that you had in becoming a leader? Because you certainly emerged when the time was needed here, but was there any examples of times in which you stepped up and had decided to start an organization like you have now, or any kind of indicators of leadership?
Certainly not that far back.
Okay.
The kernels of leadership came up a little bit later. I believe one thing I noticed about improvement, it begets more improvement. Mm-hmm. If you learn something, you learn another something else. For example, I took speech therapy 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the speech therapy is one of the things that I think is critical to choosing to become a leader, because if I were not confident in my ability to speak, I would not have been able to do it. And I had 2 problems. One is I'm born with a hearing defect, so that I don't hear things the same way you do. So I learned to talk wrong. Literally, all my consonants were wrong. And then I had a heavy Boston accent on top of it. So
you have an accent?
So imagine parking the car. So I was very difficult to understand. And so 15 years ago, I took speech therapy. And corrected these problems, and to this day I'm still working on them, correcting these problems. But again, that gave me confidence.
So when you were growing up, you lacked confidence then, or at least as much as you have now. So that was a roadblock. It was a deterrent. Mm-hmm. So when that corrected, was there any change in your leadership activities after that point in time in which you got the therapy?
I don't think there was not anything quite like what happened when the levees broke. Because what happens is the levees breaking was such a, everything was turned upside down and on its head.
Yeah.
And I really don't think it would have occurred to me that I would ever do something like this if the levees hadn't broke.
Okay.
However, I do look back and see that many things prepared me for this moment.
What were some of those?
Well, another example is I am, for 10 years I was a fitness instructor. Or maybe more than that. I can't believe I've forgotten, but I was a fitness instructor for a long, long time. And I think maybe 20 years. But just getting out in front of a group of people and leading, gave me the confidence. Just it's small, but that it made me not be afraid of just standing in front of people and having them all watching me.
Well, and being in good shape as well. It's very healthy. Right?
Very healthy.
A great stress
Very
manager
healthy.
as well.
Yeah, it is.
Anything else that occurs to you that helped in accounting for why, when the time came, you were ready?
I said the speech therapy, standing in front of people. I think the other thing that made me feel I was ready is I had to use the web to do this organization, because if you remember, I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Right.
I'm not here. I can't see anybody. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. I had to use the computer. Well, it just so happened I'm very computer savvy. I wasn't as good as my kids, but for someone my age, I was pretty out there. I was pretty good at computers. I've used databases, database management, and none of that bothered me. I understood how it all worked. I understood how to sort and filter, and so when I stepped into this job, even though I didn't know exactly what I was going to be doing, I had an idea of what it was going to be like. So I think what prepared me more than for the leadership was that the skills that I knew were going to be important to get this work done, or at least I felt like it would be important.
Great. So you went to Holyoke, you majored in psychology, and then after that, where did you go?
Then I went to graduate school. I got a master's degree in business from Tulane, and then I've been working ever since.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, how about that? 81.
Tulane.
And I had been working ever since.
Now,
I've always worked.
did you move down here for school, or how
I
did you
moved
end
down
up?
here because my husband is a local.
Okay. Ah.
Born and raised.
Okay. So when you all married, then you moved down here.
Yes.
What year was that?
We moved in 80.
Moved in 80. Okay. Good. So, and then what did you do once you arrived?
Yeah, after I finished my degree, I went straight to work, and I had always worked full time up until a little bit before the levees broke. I was always working full-time jobs, always in marketing. That's where I found out that I had a skill in direct mail writing, which I've used in all the jobs that I've had.
Okay. Good. And I guess I'm wondering, anyone have any other questions prior to the good?
No,
to the after, yeah, I know. I'm trying to see. Is there anything else though before Katrina? I guess among the things that we're looking at is interpersonal competence, social effectiveness, and it seems like your marriage and your family relationships were real solid and happy and a source of inspiration rather than holding you back. Yeah, that's what my sense is.
Although I will point out, though, I hadn't forgotten about this, that when I decided to launch Levee.org, the people who tried to talk me out of it the most were my family members. And looking back, I think it's a combination of them not wanting to see me fail, and then a combination of not really understanding who I was and that I could do this. Okay.
Your mom, that's mom.
And not necessarily my close family members. I'm talking about brothers and sisters-in-law who I did, and each of them I asked, what do you think? I'm thinking of starting this organization that, to educate all of America about the myths going on. And one of them said, well, even if you were successful, it wouldn't make any difference. And I said, well, thanks, but I'm going to do it anyway.
You weren't deterred.
So that's something I would caution anybody about to start something cool. Don't listen to your family. Because I've thought long and hard about it. There's a part of you that even your family members don't know. Yeah, even they don't know, and they see you in a certain way, you know, mom or your sister-in-law.
They,
you know, they
see
you
you
in
at
a
a
certain
different
way.
time in your life.
Yes, yes.
Well, but yet you said that your son came around because he helped start the
Oh, my son was always all for it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
in fact,
Not all of your family.
He may be.
What is his name?
His name is Stanford.
Stanford.
And he's now at Wash U, and he was 15
Good.
years old when we were evacuated. He was 15, I was 48. And he may be, you know, in terms of thinking how this was put together, he's the one that created the website and still the web designer to this day. And I think it was his mind and his vision that helped me think my vision. So I really do think it was a two-person effort.
Nice. Nice. Good. So, storm happened. Tell us what it was like for you. The storm was coming. You had the choice of evacuating. Tell us about that.
Okay. Again, I'm realizing, I'm so glad you asked me this question. We evacuated with enough clothes and stuff for a month. I'm the only person I know.
Yeah, natives.
I've never run into anybody that did that. And I think what it comes from is my husband's an insurance agent, and he had insured a lot of companies in Hurricane Andrew that took away people. Everyone moved their stuff up to the roof. I mean, the attic, and then the roof went.
Yeah.
So in other words, he knew when he saw that storm coming, my husband did, that this storm, we weren't going to be back. So he said, pack for a month. And I did. And I got all my checks, everything, for a month. So there again, I wasn't left, you know, high and dry with, when it turned up and couldn't get back into town. I had everything with me. So I didn't even think about it until just now. That's probably was one of the key things that got me thinking, let me start this organization. I wasn't in trouble. I didn't have a freezer full of shrimp.
That you did not start the organization, though, within a month, right? I mean, you so let's just keep with that then.
Sure.
Your husband knew that it would be longer than a month, so you packed for a month.
For it.
You went.
We
Where did you go and why?
We went to Lafayette because they had internet.
Okay.
They had internet. They had internet right away. Just 3 days after the Levee Board, they were up and running with their internet, and that's where we went.
So what was it like for you and your family September, October, November?
We were very lucky. We were able to find a place to live in Lafayette. It was very difficult to find anywhere to live. We found a place because we were moving very quickly. My husband thinking quickly. So Labor Day, this is just 7 days after the storm, we actually went out. We were able to find a small house.
Wow.
We just said, we'll buy this house now. The 3 people came in after us offering to pay more. And the woman said, no, I'm going to give it to these people. So we were lucky. We were able to find a place to stay. And we lived in a little suburb of Lafayette all of October, November. And we moved back December 16th. And the reason we moved back December 16th is my son's last day of class was December 15th.
Oh.
So we were very anxious to get back to town because this was home. We wanted to get back.
Okay. So when was the first time, though, that you came back and didn't move? In other words, were you able to get in and see that your house was okay?
Right.
What was that like?
I would say, I think my brother-in-law was able to get in after 1 week. And remember, we didn't flood. And so it's just a matter of securing the house, emptying out the freezer, and you know, getting some things that we forgot. Of course, we forgot a couple of things. And then we were able to get back to the house about a month into. They opened up the city about a month later.
Tell us what.
But we couldn't go.
Now, if you want to jump in, because we were both waiting for after Katrina, so.
But we couldn't move home because my son needed a place to go to school. That's why we had to stay in Lafayette.
Okay. What did you see when you came back? What was it like here?
Wow, quiet. I
No
remember
birds.
more the quiet than remember what I saw. I mean, gray and quiet. Everything was gray and everything was quiet. Even and where I lived, it wasn't as gray because it didn't flood. So, but it was just leaves and branches everywhere. But quiet and gray.
And
Creepy.
And creepy.
Creepy.
And what about at night? Were the street lights on?
In our neighborhood, the streetlights came back relatively quickly. I remember I actually spent the night all by myself in November, but still it was quiet as a mouse. There's no one here in early November.
And what neighborhood was that?
Uptown.
Uptown. And so were people coming, had people come back by the time you came back?
No, not
So it
yet.
was- no one was
Not
there
yet.
as
It was
well as-
really not many people have moved back yet.
So birds, squirrels,
Crickets, nothing.
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 When did things start coming back
Things
alive?
started coming back more alive, I would say, in March and April of
Took that long.
2006. Yeah, that picture, the very first slide at the core building, I don't know if you could see, there were a lot of people at that rally. It was amazing because there was very few people back in the city yet in January.
Did you want
I have actually 2 questions, if that's okay. When you talked earlier about your family and especially your extended family and how they didn't support you, you got some pushback from them. I was actually thinking about that, but I was thinking about the pushback that you may have gotten from, outside your family, from within the community, from within the state, from within the country. Obviously, after Katrina, everybody became a so-called expert on New Orleans topography, right? Everybody wanted to
That's a
lecture
really
you
good
about the landscape here and what needs to be rebuilt and what doesn't, and how, and so for people who've never stepped foot in the South, let alone Louisiana or New Orleans, and people in positions of power to make decisions as well. So can you talk a little bit about that pushback that you got? And of course, this is your whole mission to be. How did you confront that?
There are 2 types of pushback. There was stupid pushback from people that didn't know the facts.
Yeah.
And so here's a great myth. Right after the levees broke, people that didn't know anything said, "Oh, New Orleans probably had no flood insurance." So immediately all the politicians started talking about how they didn't have flood insurance and why should we bail them out. Turns out that the New Orleans region has a higher number of people have flood insurance that don't need it than anywhere else in the country. So in other words, it had nothing to do with facts. So that's the stupid pushback, okay? Then there's another pushback that was much more cunning. It was pushback from people pretending to be my friend and pretending to help me when they're actually trying to sabotage what I'm trying to do. And I remember who they are, okay? They're going to regret it because I didn't give up. I didn't stop.
Yeah.
I didn't stop.
You don't have to say
And
names
I know who
unless
they
you
are.
want to, of course.
Oh, go ahead,
They
say
are.
names.
And when they see I didn't listen to them, the examples are in the media. The examples are in the, let me see, who are the others that tried to political advisors, people, not James Carville, but people like James Carville, what's he called? A political.
Like a pundit.
Yeah, these people came to me acting like they're helping me when they're actually trying to sabotage my work.
Can you give us an example that can illustrate this?
Especially names would be good.
I'm trying to think of one that...
We want them on our list too.
Yeah, and they're out there, and they're always out there. They're always out there, acting like they're your friend. Well, let me see. I'll give you an example. Okay, remember I mentioned the Citizens One Levee group. Okay, that's a group that their mission was consolidation of all the levee boards. Now, the levee boards aren't the reason we flooded. It was a red herring, total red herring. Okay. But some of the and I'm going to say that because there's 12 of them, some of the leaders of that group tried to convince me to not do what I was doing and to join them in their effort. And they tried really hard, okay? And then that's one example, but there's many. But I think I remember who they are, though. And I'm sure they know I know. So, and I didn't give up. But and that's where, remember what I said about trusting your instincts? I had to recognize this person that I think sabotaging my work. I had to shut down and not listen to a word they said. And it's tough. Who do you listen to? Who do you listen to? At the end of the day, the disaster resilience leader has to trust his or her own instincts. And that's scary sometimes.
And do you think that these, not to belabor it, but do you think that these people who were trying to sabotage you, that it was, we'll just say Citizens for One Greater New Orleans, that it was necessarily malicious because they had political interests that maybe that your efforts were against?
Yes.
Or that maybe they wanted to steal some of your thunder and get all of the glory for their organization?
No, we were doing completely different things.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember I said no one was doing what our group was doing. It was not only was it completely different, it was polar opposite.
Yeah.
Okay. In a way, polar opposite. what we were saying is this is a federal responsibility,
Yeah.
and they were saying it's a local responsibility. And everyone knows it's federal now. Yeah, all the people that told me, oh, I agreed with you all along. Okay, sure, come on over, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but the day, the day that I did that rally, people looked at me like I had two heads. And the media was like, person with interesting opinion. The media, yeah. And WWL for a year didn't have me on their show. A year. And now I can call them up. I'm best buddies with them. But a year they distanced themselves from that person with a strange, interesting opinion.
And then my second question was, we've talked a lot in here about, we've all heard about post-traumatic stress, right? But we've talked a lot about post-traumatic growth and how traumatic experiences can so often change a person in a positive way. It could be a very personal change. It can be something for the greater good. Can you talk about how this has changed you and how you've grown from it?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I can't go anywhere without being recognized.
Well, that's not always a good thing.
But it's a big difference,
Yeah.
and I'm being recognized because of the work I'm doing,
Yeah.
which I really believe in, and I've learned to understand that's part of this work. It's good that I'm being recognized. You know, it means success. It means if people couldn't recognize me if the TV reporter didn't keep calling me. So it's indicative of success. Not that that's why I did it. Heavens, can you imagine? No, I did it. It's yet another proof, evidence of success. Okay, and as far as personal growth, yeah, it is. I think I said it already, but I still can't believe when I wake up every day that I'm at the helm of this organization. I still don't believe it. It's still hard for me to believe because I don't think about it. I wake up and think about what I still have to do. I wake up and think about the myths that I still have to beat out there and the battles that we still have to fight. So I don't think about, rarely do I ever think about.
What is that? Do we need to be worried about that? Is there some sort of a signal or something? Is it coming from there? Okay, we're all right. Go ahead.
I like what you're saying about your evidence, your proof of success.
Evidence of success.
Did you have other benchmarks that you had set for yourself along the way, and what did those look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, one of the evidences is the size of the organization, but that's not really a good one because if the mission of Levee.org had been for it to be big, I would have done things, I would have led it completely differently, okay? But that wasn't the mission. The mission was battling these myths. So I'll give you a good measure. Each time, the number of times that big media, like CNN, BCB, am I saying that right? BBC, that they call me for expert opinion, to weigh in. That's really an evidence of success. Each time, I hate to admit it, but each time Levee.org or I get some sort of honor, is evidence of success. I got voted to the Nichols State University Women in Government as an honoree. There's only 4 every year. So that's evidence of success. And then what I have to do, and even though I cringe a little bit, each time we get an award or I get an honor, I have to tell everybody, because that's evidence of success, guys. Yes. The New York Times, we got over 1,500 petition signatures when the New York Times said Katrina flooded New Orleans, when they should not be doing such sloppy work. They should be much more specific when they talk about the flooding. And we did a petition and 1,500 signatures in 2 days. I mean, over 1,000 signatures in 2 days during the holiday. That's evidence of success. And they're everywhere. If you're just looking for them, you'll see them. Does that answer your question? I probably could think of more, but they're not. They're in places you might not expect. Evidence of success.
So, getting back to Katrina, you guys being back, you had already started the organization just barely, right? When you all moved back here?
We had, yes. We officially launched December 1st.
December 1st. Okay. And then tell me what was the biggest challenges for you early on, like the first 2 months, let's say.
Okay. What did we work hard on in the first 2 months? Again, credibility. Credibility, absolutely, that's it, credibility. We were just a little group with a strange opinion. And so we woke up every day, what do we do to gain credibility? And so one day over the dinner table, this is March of 2006, I said to my family, and including those same brothers and sisters-in-law, tomorrow I'm going to call Congressman Jindal. He was a congressman at the time for the first district, excuse me. And because I heard he's having some diplomats in town, and I'm going to call him up and ask him if I can go talk to them. He's having some members of Congress in town to see the damage. And the whole table was quiet. And then my sister-in-law went, so what's for dinner? And changed the subject. Well, the next morning I called Bobby Jindal's office and told them what I wanted to do. They called me back in an hour and said, we'd love you to.
Great.
We'd like you to, and meet us at Patu's on St. Charles Avenue. Please be on time because the congressman won't have much time. And Congressman Jindal signed on, and he was our 2000th supporter. Okay, that's credibility.
Yes.
Having Congressman Jindal sign on to your organization. Okay, so we're always working at what do we do to get credibility? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? So
Credibility within your family.
Credibility within.
Well, so what happened then? Did you then point this out to your sister-in-law?
I think they noticed.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But it reinforced the confidence, your
Yeah.
self-confidence.
Oh, they
and
believe
not
in me now. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Oh, by the way, I have another sign of success. We have almost 250,000 page loads on our website. 750,000 hits, basically.
Hits.
So I was just thinking that, measures of success. And I have 200 followers on Huffington Post. There's another, I'm a Huffington Post blogger. I just got bought out by AOL, but, but you know, it is a Huffington Post. Signs of success.
So I'm wondering, in March, you're beginning to establish credibility. Your family is now beginning to recognize that you're on to something. What was the challenge after that? When you were getting credibility, what was I guess I'm thinking the summer, the rest of 2006. What was happening?
In the early years, even though our mission was always education about the true cause of the New Orleans flooding, okay, we were a little fuzzy on how to apply it, okay, and that went through a metamorphosis. For a little while, we were pushing for the block grant program. Help me here, you might remember that. A Baton Rouge Republican congressman was pushing for block grants for everybody, and it failed. Remember that? This is May of 2006.
Very early on, right.
I mean 2006, and it failed. So we were considering pushing for that, and then we backed off because no, that's really not our mission. And we made a lot of enemies when we wouldn't help out with that too. You can make enemies just because you won't support something. So these are the early days when people weren't really established yet. But eventually began to realize that pushing for federal legislation was a good way to push our mission. Because if I were to go up to you and say, you should really vote for this law, you should urge your congressman to pass this law, I have to tell you why. So in the process of telling you why, I'm educating you. In the process of educating you, we're fulfilling our mission. So, and that worked really well. And so we picked up on that pretty quickly. Around we spent pretty much all of 2006 and 2007 pushing for federal legislation, one of which was reform of the Army Corps of Engineers.
There is no one that I think, I'm fairly confident, that grew up in the state. Could you tell us about the Levee Board and just how they constructed this?
Sure.
Because that's what you were dealing with at that time, right? Trying to the reading, the voracious reading you were doing.
Right.
You learned about all this.
Okay. Prior to 1965 and Hurricane Betsy, which wasn't that long ago. Okay. I was 9. Okay. We had a terrible Hurricane Betsy. There was a lot of death and flooding in the Lower Ninth Ward. The U.S. Army, the Congress decided to take our flood protection and give it to the Corps of Engineers. So from now on, it's federal. The only thing the levee boards have to do is collect our 30% share to pay for it and maintenance after they're finished. That's it.
And what?
That's it. maintenance after they're finished, not before they're finished, after they're finished. 40 years later, Hurricane Katrina comes through. The system's only like 75% complete, not supposed to be done until 2015, and of course the whole thing broke. And a lot of political power went to work to deflect blame for the failed system away from the people who did it, the Corps, and onto us. That's it in a nutshell. Okay? A lot of money was spent, our money, taxpayer money, was spent blaming us for what happened. The levee boards are just a bunch of maintenance people and tax collectors. That's all they are.
Okay.
But they were held up as the reason that the reason that the levees failed. It's a red herring. They red herring. And there I was. I felt like I was the only one 5 years ago that wasn't buying that. Excuse me, crap. I wasn't buying it. But it was just me and the couple of followers that we had. No one else was saying it back then. And even now they're just starting to. But it finally gotten through, but it's just starting to.
When did Harry Shearer recognize this? You were ahead of him.
I was ahead of
right?
him. And he'll even admit it. Harry Shearer got on board when he started seeing our signs all over.
Do you all know who Harry Shearer is?
He's the voice of a lot of The Simpsons. And he also just did a documentary called The Big Uneasy.
He's made numbers of movies.
Yeah.
Spinal Tap,
Spinal Tap.
is an example. of
This
that.
is Spinal Tap.
Yeah, and he has a weekly
show.
NPR show on Sunday evenings.
Yes, he does, yeah. So I kind of woke, Harry noticed what I was doing, and for a couple of years he was doing his thing independently of levees.org, and that's okay. That's okay. The more the separate things working for the same thing, the better. We've gotten a little closer lately, and I wasn't in his movie, The Big Uneasy, but my hair is. And he wanted only experts in his movie. His movie's about all the experts talking about what really happened, and I highly recommend The Big Uneasy.
There was a scene in Treme in which John Goodman.
He played.
Did you provide the script for him? In terms
Talking when
of-
he's down at the,
No,
down
but
at the
the
canal and he
Yeah.
goes berserk on the reporter.
Right.
One of the best
Yeah,
scenes
yeah,
of the whole
really is.
thing. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just like, yes.
No, but one of the producers came to my house and got some. I talked with him, and he got some of our paraphernalia and took it with him, and they assured me that when Treme came out that they'd get the language right, and they did.
Do you think they did?
They did. I think they did a good job.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, with the levee boards then in existence, and you're saying essentially that they get the money and then they maintain after it's
And they
established.
collect the 30% to pay our share, and that's it. They're tax collectors and maintenance men. That's all they are.
And they have, didn't they say it's not our fault, it's the federal levies?
They did, but they did a really bad job of it. I remember at the time, they all of a sudden they're the scapegoats, okay? And they weren't well prepared for defending themselves, and their reactions were terrible. But they wrote letters to the editor attacking the women who were working for the Citizens for One effort. You have to realize some of the women may not have understood what they were doing. They were following other leaders, and it was poorly done. And they all ended up being fired. And the poor people, they couldn't even really defend themselves. With the whole country thought it was their fault. Yeah, they'd be interesting people to interview. I think I should catch up with them, find out about that. But and I could understand what was going on, but it was just. Now, if it ever happened again,
We're ready.
Yeah, we're ready. So, and what happened is they built. Everyone thinks they consolidated all the levee boards into one levee board. That's not what happened. They built a super board to be over all the other levee boards. So all the old levee boards are all still in existence. All the people who work for them are all fired, and new people were hired.
And the temporary, we live out in Lake Shore, you know, and there is on Orleans Canal, there is a temporary, quote unquote, pumping station. What do you think the safety of those pumps and the whole system now?
Well, that's a hard question because it's a big system, okay? Those pumps, according to a whistleblower with the court, will burn up and fail if they're ever turned on for more than an hour or two, according to a whistleblower, and that's in the movie. And I tend to believe she's probably right. They're hydraulic pumps. They were never tested, and they can't be tested because you can't get the water high enough to test them. Because if you put the water high enough to test them, the walls are going to break. So no, those we should hope we don't need those pumps.
Yeah, I've heard similar kinds of stories in that
Yeah.
regard. So we're in 2006. Everything's being sorted out. And when do you think that the nation started getting it?
I don't think they got it yet.
Yeah, well, they don't have it yet, but most of the major news sources get it. They're just not admitting it yet. And certainly members of Congress have it now. I mean, the only members of Congress now that say something stupid now, that they're very few, and they're no senators. They're usually people that just got elected and don't know anything. So members of Congress has it. They don't say stupid things about New Orleans anymore, that we should all move, things like that, and we should pave over the city. It took a while, but I do have to say at the 5th anniversary, you can definitely see progress that just passed. That you see it in the press, or you see it in the things that members of Congress say, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. What I like to say is we're there when we finally get an independent investigation of the levee failures.
Yeah, there's a movement, right? There's a movement to get that investigation.
Yes.
How's that going?
Well, that's a movement that we're leading.
Yeah.
And right now it's basically on hold, I guess I could say. It was in 2007. It was filed in the House and the Senate. No, it was attached to the Water Resources Development Act. It got stripped off, which always happens with amendment. It didn't pass. And then in 2008, the 829 Investigation Act, which is just an independent investigation of the levee failures, was filed in the House and the Senate. Didn't pass. And then right now, Garrett Graves, who is I call him a vice governor. He's a very powerful person in the Baton Rouge state office. He has assured me, and I believe him, that he has asked Congress to attach the 829 Investigation Act to Water 10, with Water 11 now, Water Resource Development Act of 11. And he's very powerful, and for that reason I think he might be able to get it done. But we're just going to keep pushing for it. We're just going to keep asking for it. Bloody Sunday took 40 years. But what I like to say lately is 84 days after President Obama, 84 days after the BP oil spill, President Obama called for an independent investigation of the oil disaster to find out what happened, for lessons learned, and make sure it never happens again. It's been over 5 years, and there's still been no independent investigation of the levee failures.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Nor where all the money's been spent.
That's another thing, where all the money went.
Well, we have a brief amount of time because we have to vacate this place by 5 o'clock. It's not just eventually move. As you know, and you've done it as well, looked at the characteristics of disaster resilience leaders. Tell us about the disaster resilience leaders in your effort that you discovered, that you've ran into, that you admire, that you appreciate, that we should be attending to, that they're good models for us.
Okay.
Are there any?
Yes, well, one comes to mind.
Okay.
I wasn't prepared for this question.
That's okay.
Her name is,
I'll follow it up.
She's with Beacon of Hope, and she's one of their leaders who had never done anything like this. And wish I could think of her name. I feel bad that I can't think of her name. Actually, she's not the one I was thinking of. It was one of the others. I'm so upset that I can't think of her name.
That's okay.
Because this has been a completely new thing for her. I mean, Denise is a wonderful woman, but she's been very active and done lots of things before. For her to do something new wasn't a whole weird thing. But Connie Udo was her name. Connie Udo. And I have nothing but praise for the work that she's done. And she's been one of those people just a different person because of this.
Any elected leaders?
That are disaster resilience leaders?
Yep.
Doesn't sound promising facial expression.
It's like elected a leader in the same.
She's like, that's not
There is
military
one,
intelligence.
but then he was for that effort that was a whole big red herring, and that was the one Levee Board effort. And he worked so hard at getting everything pushed, and then he decided he wanted to run for governor. He was in Plaquemine Parish. Can you help me what his name was?
That ran for governor?
Well, he wanted to run for office, but no, I think he ran for congressman and didn't make it.
Was it Malone's son? No, he's
Not
sipping on.
Rosenthal, it was,
But you're saying
his name was attached to the one Levee Board effort. He was,
and he is or he's not a disaster resilience leader?
I would say he is.
Is, okay.
Yeah, I would say he is.
Okay.
But
Well, I'll write you
can't
about
think of his
that.
name.
Yeah.
He pretty much dropped out of sight when he didn't, after he didn't become congressman.
Mhm. But you wouldn't put Governor Jindal or Blanco or the mayor, former mayor? Anyway, okay. Class, any other questions that you have of this fantastic person?
What is the most satisfying outcome
Great.
of having had this experience for you as an individual?
The realization and discovery that you can do anything you want, you know, if you want to do it, and that once your mind's made up to do it, it's already half done. Abraham Lincoln said that, and I truly, if I could do this, then you could do anything. You know, you could do anything, whatever it is you choose to do. But if I did this, and I'm telling you with no experience, no political experience, I did not know before the levees broke how many members of Congress we had, much less what their names were. And now I know all of that. I know their middle names now. So, and the stuff you need, you learn on the job, okay? But just the choice, I'm going to do this, and the belief in, and don't let yourself be talked out of it, okay? All you have to do is believe in what you're doing, and like I said, trust your instincts, and if someone tells you you're wrong, you're probably not. I waited for 5 years for someone to jump behind a tree with all the evidence that I'm wrong. It never happened. I'm still waiting for it to happen. It hasn't happened yet. I'm beginning to think maybe it's not going to happen. Okay, not to say that you should be, and my point for saying that is don't be overly confident.
Yeah.
No, I know everything. You know, there's always this worry, gosh, I must be missing something. I mean, I can't be the only person. For a little while, I felt like the person in a B-rate movie who knows everything, but no one will believe her. That's how I felt for a long time. I was living a B-rate movie. But I had that little fear that I might be wrong was actually probably a good thing. You know, it kept me sharp. It kept me making sure that everything I said was accurate and right. And if anybody challenged anything I said, I could, no, pull out my paperwork, here it is. I'm just quoting what's already in the media. But no, seriously, if I could do this, anything you all in this room decide to do, you can do it.
One thing,
decide to do it.
I guess one thing I want to point out, you can expand if you want, but Levee, you're focusing on Levee is not limited to New Orleans. Right?
That's right. That's right. And I didn't know that when I started this work, that what I was doing would have national implications. I thought this was just
World implications.
And perhaps even the world. But levee failure and flooding and what happened to us is going on. The things that happened here that led to these failures is going on everywhere. It's all over America, and probably, well, the Corps of Engineers and international organizations is probably going on in Iraq and Afghanistan right now. So, but I didn't know that when I first started this work. It grew into that. And it was, and one of the good things about that recognition, we now have a Florida, a California, Illinois, New York chapter, is anybody looking at our organization for the first time will go, oh, well look, they have all these satellites. They're not just New Orleans, not just a bunch of whiners. Okay? So it ended up being good both ways.
Beautiful.
Okay, it worked out.
Great. Sandy, thank you so much
You are
for
very
coming.
welcome.
So much. Appreciate your time.
Listening.
Thank you.